Okay, so I've held a Pixel 6. Let's talk about it. All right, so today we get a bunch of officially confirmed real details on the new Pixel 6 and Pixel 6 Pro coming up this year from Google. I got some very brief off-camera hands-on time, okay? So I didn't get to shoot any of that, but I have a lot of details and I have some official images that I can share with you, so let's get into all of it. So like I said, there's a Pixel 6 and a Pixel 6 Pro. They're both pretty huge phones, but the Pixel 6 Pro is a little bigger, around 6.7 inches. It has glossy metal rails instead of matte black rails, and it is slightly curved on the sides of the screen. It's a 120 hertz screen instead of a flat 90 hertz on the smaller one. And there's also new camera hardware across both of them with a shared primary and ultra wide, but there's also a new 4x telephoto camera on the Pro. And they have this horizontal camera bar across the whole back of the phone, side to side, that honestly, it looks better in person than it does with the renders. Both up front will have a hole punch selfie camera in the middle and a nearly bezel-less display. And of course, both run Android 12 with all the new aesthetics and Material U and all those features. So that's nice and that's exciting. And there's a bunch more details to discuss closer to launch. But the one thing I want to talk about is the new custom designed silicon that will be in both of them called Google Tensor. So this was rumored for a little bit. That brewing in the background was this Whitechapel project of Google designing their own silicon to eventually go into the Pixel phone. This turned out to be true. So there's a couple different benefits to this, and it's not even a new idea completely. You know, obviously Apple designs all the chips in their iPhones, but also Huawei makes the Kirin chips, and Samsung makes Exynos chips. And there's even been little bits of custom silicon inside Pixel phones before already. But this entire chip being powered by just a Tensor chip, well, that's a big deal. I think it's particularly important for the Pixel line specifically because of how much Google does with software and that optimization process. And I think we're going to see a lot of big changes here. So let's start with the biggest, most obvious place, which is in their cameras. So we all know by now that Pixels have had really good photo qualities, and that's because of their awesome software and computational photography. But the video quality has always just been pretty average from the Pixel. And so what Google showed me on Pixel 6 was a comparison with the Pixel 6 and the iPhone 12 and the Pixel 5. They're basically taking all those computational photography chops and applying them to video because Tensor enables that now. And it was really impressive what I was able to see. That's exciting. That's the HDR, that's the noise reduction, the stabilization, all of that smarts in video now too. Also, you know, Pixel cameras have always been great, but since Pixel 2, they've basically been using the same kind of small at this point sensor because they've got it so dialed with their algorithms. They can of course improve the glass and of course the iris opening every year, but generally it's been the same sensor, and I suspect they were reluctant to change it because why move to some huge new 50 megapixel sensor if you don't have the computational photography chops to back it up? But this year with Pixel 6, it is big new sensors, and I'm really curious to see what kind of results we're going to get with Tensor and the image processing on these big new sensors. Now, the other sort of main pillar one that Google was talking to me about was speech recognition. And basically being able to do as much of this as possible on device as efficiently and quickly as possible. But yeah, just being as dedicated as possible by literally giving parts of the Tensor chip that sole purpose of decoding speech into text and making things like Assistant way faster. I think battery life is another thing to keep an eye on with the Tensor chip in Pixel 6. The point is, do you remember when the Macs switched from Intel designed chips to Apple designed M1 chips and literally doubled in battery life? That's because of optimization and efficiency. I'm not saying we're going to get that insane level of gains here, but I think the streamlining of power and efficiency with Tensor chips should make for a better battery experience. But then on top of all of that, now we got to think about, you know, Android in general. They can offer much longer software updates, much longer than other Android phones. As of right now, technically, you know, Android phones can offer software updates as long as Qualcomm also officially supports those updates. But Now that they control the entire stack, they can optimize Android for as many years as possible, and they want to optimize Android for as long as possible to continue giving you updates because they want to keep you on that phone. I feel like we've seen this kind of from the other side, from the iPhone. Apple has made a lot of money from selling iPhones for a really long time, but that's slowed down a bit. And now people are keeping their iPhones longer than ever. So Apple realizes they want to make as much money from the person with that iPhone during the life cycle of that phone as possible. So you've seen them move into services, Apple TV, Apple News, all these services you can buy and pay monthly. And then that iPhone that you have for a long time will make Apple a lot of money. So with Tensor, just enables them the ability to guarantee way longer software updates to keep you using that device way longer, like the iPhone. I think this could also have an effect on pricing. Qualcomm has to bargain with their foundry and get certain prices and eventually upsell to OEMs like Google. So cutting out that middleman of Qualcomm can actually save them money. But you know what? Actually, one more thing that just came to mind. This could be the beginning of an ecosystem-wide silicon thing for Google. The same way that M1 chip we've talked so much about is basically, it's a scaled up version of the A14. I feel like there could be a scaled up or scaled down version of Tensor in Google's future. Maybe a scaled down version for a Pixel Watch someday, or a scaled up version for a Chromebook, or really any other device, or a smart speaker or something like that, or a smart display. That would just make sense. So for all of this, I guess what I'm trying to say here is the first generation of Tensor chip we're about to see in the Pixel is going to be really interesting to see what type of stuff it really unlocks for the Pixel now and then in future generations too. So something to keep an eye on. If you want to